great privilege as we get to interview Jim McPherson. Jim has been a long-standing member of the Red Deer community. We've crossed paths a number of times in ways and places, and particularly Jim was instrumental in helping me come back to Red Deer. Sometimes ways that's a rather natural evolution of a family where, in our case, 5 boys and 3 of them are back in Red Deer. But I have to thank Jim for that. And we also, lived close to each other at one time, or at least on the same street in Red Deer at one time, and we've been members of the Rotary Club for a very extended period of time.
Don't add them both up.
Yeah. So today is a privilege, and Jim has had a significant impact on the Red Deer community, both professionally as an insurance broker and leader, and as a politician. So and as a family member whose family in other ways contributed significantly to the changes in Red Deer and some of the events in Red Deer. So I'm looking forward to hearing about some of those, and particularly hearing about those that I might have had an association with, and I guess that means in the Rotary Club. But anyway, Jim, perhaps we could begin, if we might, with your family. You might tell us a bit about your own family and how they came to Red Deer, and how you end up staying in Red Deer.
Oh, well, thank you, Bob, and thank you for this unique opportunity. It's never done this before, probably never do it again, but it's really neat to do this, particularly with you, because our families have been so entwined in Red Deer over these many years that I guess we could go on forever on this, but I don't think we dare do that. Our family, my father was a manager of Canadian Bank of Commerce. He started his career in Calgary at the age of 18. He became a manager. His first posting was in Willingdon, Alberta. And from there he went to where my younger brother Hugh was born. I was born in Calgary. Before Dad was a manager, he was a clerk. Then we moved to Willingdon, and then our family moved to St. Paul, Alberta. And then we moved to Vermilion, Alberta. And then Father...
Sorry, Vermilion or Fort Vermilion?
Vermilion, yeah, Vermilion, northeast of Edmonton. And then Father was transferred to Red Deer. We moved as a family in 1958 to Red Deer. At that time, Father was the manager of the Canadian Bank of Commerce. And shortly after that, the Canadian Bank of Commerce amalgamated with the Canadian Imperial Bank, and Father ended up being the manager of that amalgamated branch. So we moved to Red Deer in 1958. Dad, my mother and father became well ensconced in the community. My father was the first president of the Red Deer Club, the Red Deer Waskesiu Club of the Kiwanis, the Red Deer Kiwanis Waskesiu. Became their founder. He was a Rotarian first, and then he moved to the Kiwanis Club because they wanted an experienced man that could be their first president, and that was Tom.
That's not unusual in Red Deer. I know Dad at one time was in 3 clubs at the same time. One, of course, was the Kinsler Club, which ejected you at age 40.
Yes.
And then it was just a party club, and so he went looking for another club and joined the Rotary Club.
Yeah.
And then he was in the one you probably never heard of, the Active Club.
No.
I think they were just active at having parties.
Yeah. Well, that was sort of the initial our beginnings in Red Deer is in 1958. Our family moved. At that time, our older brother Alec actually never moved to Red Deer. Alec, by the time we moved to Red Deer in '58, Alec was already in medical school at the University of Alberta. He was here in the summer, but he was actually a medical student. My sister Lynn, who was second in her family, she moved to Red Deer. She graduated from the Lindsay Thurber Comprehensive High School. She was Queen of Hearts her final year, and you would know her, and a lot of other people your age would know her. She's done well. She was at our home she was here last week watching the Olympics with my wife Marlis. It was terrific to have her. So there was Lynn and there was Neil, and Neil graduated high school in Red Deer and went on to become a teacher in Edmonton and ultimately a principal. Hugh, my younger brother, we all graduated in Red Deer. Hugh became a principal, and I've got lots to say about Hugh in a little while, and then myself. So we were a family of 5, and Red Deer became our stomping grounds, as it were. So the other point I thought I might make about Mona, our mother, was Mona was very, very involved in the community, as was Dad. Mona was, I think, president of the Dr. Richard Parsons Auxiliary Clinic at the Red Deer Hospital. And so she was very, very involved in the community. So that was our family. We moved to Red Deer a long time ago, and we've all been very active in the community.
Your comments trigger a couple of points that I recall around our kitchen table as well. One was Father's perennial concern that it needed people like your father to come to Red Deer, but come to Red Deer and stay, because certainly after the war and in the 50s, Red Deer was known as branch plant country, and major companies, particularly the banks, the RCMP, the government, would turn over their staff every 2 to 4 years. Yeah. So if you had a good person come to Red Deer, that was just a good reason for them to be promoted and leave. And I know when Dad got involved in starting the United Way, he had an awful time because the first person was an excellent salesperson, marketing person, but he was the board chair, and they couldn't find a second person the year after because, of course, he left.
Yeah.
So Red Deer really had a problem with continuity, in an unfortunate way. It was a subsidiary of Calgary and Edmonton, and what happened here was belated with less effect, and more particularly that quality people left.